Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about the basic inheritance example we identified. Like we created one box class, and along with this particular box class, we created our box weight class here. Now observe carefully. We define the private property inside this particular box weight class here. And now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to call this particular super keyword. After that, I'm trying to set this particular values. Okay, and later we are calling this particular value. Now, so today we are going to discuss another important concept to call. So how we can refer the superclass variable, and the variable is going to refer to the subclass object. So if we observe, basically here we created the box class. Now what I'm doing is I'm trying to change to the box here. Getting the point? Now I'm trying to change to the box class. So observe carefully. Whenever I'm trying to change this reference variable to the box, now I'm not getting any error first. And whenever I'm calling with help of this particular box references like BW1, I'm calling the value method. And this is important. Which value method is going to call here? Which value method is calling? This is important. We need to understand. So carefully observe, even though we change the reference variable of this particular box weight to box here, but still the box weight value method is only it is calling. Getting the point? Box weight value method only it is calling here. Now this is important. We need to understand here. So why this particular example is calling on the box weight? Because here the reference variable we made as a superclass, but finally what we need to understand, object here we need to understand about the object. This object is very important here. So now you can see here we are creating the box weight object. Here we are trying to create the box weight object, and the type we made as a super type. But even though if we made as a super type, first how it is going to work here. So as I suggested, this is the heap memory, and here we are trying to create our box weight object here, and this particular box weight object contains the properties. What are the properties we are having? Something like width we are having, and height we are having, and depth we are having, and finally weight we are having. Okay, so these are all the four properties we are having. So because these three logically existed and this value physically existed. Getting the point? Now along with this we are having the value method. Along with this we are having value method, and if we observe, so here also we created the box object. Here also we created the box object and will contain the width, height, and depth here. So it does not contain the weight property. And here also it will contain the value. But what we need to understand carefully, so this is contain the box reference, and this is contain the box weight reference. Getting the point? Object is the box weight, but the type what I'm making, the type I'm making as a box here. Box something like a BW1 is equals to new box. So new box weight here. So whenever the box weight object is created, it will look like this. Okay. Internally, we are having the property sign method. If this method is no longer available, whatever the value method we are trying to call, if this method is no longer available, it will look up the superclass value method. But right now we have a value method. Even though the type we made as a box here, still it is going to call the box weight method, because the object, like here we are trying to create a new references, new with the box weight object. Now you can see here, new with box weight object we are creating. So whenever we are creating like this, first it is going to give the highest priority to identify the box weight. First it is going to give the highest priority to identify the box weight class properties here. If the box weight class property is no longer available, it will look up the box class here. Okay, so this is we need to understand, and because of this only, what happening internally, we are getting the box weight properties here. Okay, getting the point? This is important. Now if this particular box weight object is no longer available, what happens internally? So whatever the object we are created, Whatever the object we are creating, the specific object properties only it is going to call. But here, object we created box weight, the type we made here. So what is the advantage we are going to get basically? What is the advantage we are going to get? So if I'm going to call the specific properties, what happens internally? So for example, bw1 dot get I'm trying to call. So now you can see how many properties we are getting. So only depth we are getting, height we are getting, and width we are getting. So why I'm not getting the weight property? If you go to this particular box weight class, okay, we'll generate this. Now I'm going to generate this. Okay, so setter method and getter method for this particular weight property. Now what I will do, I will go to this and here I'm going to call this. Now you can see how many properties are generating again, only 3. So depth is coming, height is coming, as well as width is coming. So why the get weight property, like the get weight method, is not coming? If you observe carefully, here we are trying to load this method, get weight method. So if I'm going to call this, now it will give you an error. So why it is giving me an error? So why it is giving me an error? Getting the point? This is important, we need to understand here. Okay, so observe carefully. So what we need to understand carefully here, what we are doing here we are trying to create a box weight object, but inside the box weight object here, we are having the method here. So what is the method we are having? The get weight method is available inside the box weight, but still we are unable to access here. We are unable to access it. So whenever you're trying to change the type to the superclass variable, whenever we change the type to superclass variable, what happens internally? Getting the point. What happens internally? Only superclass properties are going to use it at compile time. For example, if I'm trying to add this information, okay, this information we cannot add, and here if I'm trying to remove, so if I'm trying to comment out this value method, so observe carefully. If I'm trying to comment out this variable, what happens internally? This is important. You'll get the value method errors also. Now you can see I'm getting value method errors. Getting the point. This is very important. We need to understand. So observe carefully the output here. If we observe carefully, the output basically it is calling the box weight dot value method. Okay, it is calling the box weight dot value method. But problem here, even though it is calling the subclass value method. So this message is basically where we define inside this particular box weight. Now you can see box weight volume is. Even though the value method is calling the subclass, but still it is giving me an error. Still it is giving me an error. You can see b1 dot value. The b1 dot value method, this is highlighted. So this is the method is called. Okay. So this is the value method is calling the subclass here. But why I am getting an error here? Why this line number 9 also it is giving me an error? Getting the point. This is very important here. Whenever we are making the super type here, the method should be available in the super class, and the same method it should be available in the subclass. Then only the subclass method will call here. Getting the point. Then only the subclass method will call here. So otherwise it will look up the superclass. First observe carefully what I want to provide. When you are trying to create a box weight, getting the point. So box weight here, let me write here. Box weight and something like BW and equals to new, and here now what I'm doing is here I'm going to provide the box weight. So carefully observe when you're trying to providing the subclass type box weight, all the properties are going to identified in the subclass only. Whatever we are trying to access, all the information should available in the subclass. If any one of the property or any one of the method is not available, it's going to give an error. But here when we are trying to make a super type, when you are making the super type. So instead of this particular box weight is basically it is a subtype and box is a super type. Whenever you are making the super type, compile time it will look up the superclass property, runtime it will look up the subclass property. Getting the point? This is important. Compile time, the properties are going to look up the superclass. Why it is going to look up the superclass? Because the type we made as a box. Because of this particular type, it's going to look up the superclass properties. At runtime what happens basically, because what object is created, it's going to identify it here. So this identification is going to made by the runtime, and this particular section is going to made by the compile time. So now understand carefully. So because of this particular behavior, here we are getting an error. The line number 9, it is giving me an error because so the reference what we are making type basically, this type basically compiler will understand the super type. Getting the best. Compiler will understand the box type. Whenever it is compiler will understand the box type, the volume method should available inside the box class. If it is not available, so like we are going to get an error. But runtime what happening here? So this is the highlighting. Runtime, it is going to take the highest priority subclass here. It is going to take highest priority subclass. If the subclass method is not available, it will look up the superclass here. Okay. So now again super, and I'm going to make again here subclass. Okay. So first it will give you the 100% priority to this particular subclass. If the subclass functionality not available, it will look up the superclass here. Okay. But here first priority it will go to the subclass. But this functionality is going to applicable only runtime. But compile time it will not look up the subclass. Directly it will look up the superclass. But this functionality will work only whenever we are making this type here super type with the sub object. Super type with the subclass object here. Okay. So here the line number 1 we are doing here. So this is we are making the superclass reference variable and object we are creating subclass object. Okay. This is important here. Because of this it is giving me an error. Getting the point? Now observe carefully what I will do. I'm going to comment out one object here. So I don't want to use multiple objects here. And we'll see the box 1. Okay. So carefully observe what happening internally. So the box parameters constructor it is calling because we created one box object and box weight we are creating. Now and identify here. So second one is calling volume is because this box dot volume it is trying to call the superclass, and here we created the superclass object. Okay, but first one if you observe carefully, it is calling the box weight here. It is calling the box weight. So the runtime it is identifying the subclass object, but compile time it is identifying the superclass object. Why it is identified? Because what we are doing it, we are making this is a superclass reference variable. So if I modify to this as a box weight, now you can see. So this is also we can enable this. This is also we can enable here. Getting the point? Now this is working perfectly without getting any error. But only the problem, whenever I'm trying to modify this to the super time, this variable it is giving me this particular method is not available. Why it is not available? So this is the same what I suggested here. Compile time, it will look up the superclass type. Runtime, it will look up the subclass type. If the subclass is not available, then it will go to the superclass here. Okay, but this is failing at compile time only. Getting the point? This is failing at compile time only. Okay, this is very important example we are trying to discuss here. Okay, so any questions regarding this particular superclass variable and subclass information? Superclass variable and subclass object here. Now I'm trying to print the get weight, whatever the weight value we provided, the weight value also I'm trying to load here. Okay, so this is very important concept we are discussing here. Okay, you can see the last property whatever the last value we provided here, 45.4. So this value is going to set as a our the weight property, and we are trying to returning the same value here. Getting the pen. This is very important here. Okay. So if we don't have anything here, now I'm going to discuss about the on one of the important concept to call super keyword here. Okay. So this is very important example we are discussing. But anyway, in the last session, we used this particular super keyword. Now I'm going to provide the information about this super keyword, how it is working here. Not the inheritance part 1 video. It is the same as a keyword. Okay. So today I will check the video like why it is renamed here. So I don't know. Really, it is a different name. So you're talking about this only, right? What I did here, I use the same behavior here. Okay. Whatever the C variable we are trying to. So this particular. Okay. So got it. Now I delete this and I will try to re-upload the session. So with the latest whatever we discuss here. Okay. So this is I will do today. Now back to here. So if we don't have anything regarding this particular whatever we discuss, the superclass information subclass here. Okay. Now let me move on to the one of the important concept called super. So super basically what we are doing it. So this is will give you the information. Now what I am doing it, whenever I'm trying to call this particular box weight, the constructor with help of this particular parameters, I'm trying to call the superclass functionality. Okay. Getting the point. So what we need to understand basically here, whenever we are trying to call this particular box weight constructor internally, what we are doing it, we are trying to call this particular super here. So when we are trying to use this particular super, what happening internally, it is going to call the super class constructor with these many parameters. Okay. Super class constructor it is going to call with these many parameters. Like first we need to check here whether the superclass constructor is available or not. First, what we need to check here whether the whatever the constructor we are having, so it's going to allow these many parameters or not. For example, if I'm going to add this particular weight also. For example, if I'm going to add this particular weight also, what happening internally? It is giving me an error. Why it is giving me an error? Because now count these parameters here like we are having 4 parameters. So 4 parameters constructor should available inside this particular box class. Getting the point? So whenever you're trying to call this particular super keyword, first we need a reference of this particular inheritance here, like how we are defining box weight. Now it is extending with this particular box class here. Getting the point? So we need to understand here how this particular box weight is extending with this particular box class. Okay. So carefully observe what I'm doing here. Now because of this particular relation, this super keyword is identifying here the super class constructor should available this 4 parameters. Now I'm going to show you the box class right now. How many parameters constructor we are having? So 3 parameters. We don't have the 4 parameterized constructor here. Getting the point? Right now, we don't have a 4 parameters constructor. Because of this, the box weight, it is giving me an error here. Now, what you understand basically here, whenever we are trying to work on this particular inheritance example here, if we want to call the superclass functionality, getting the point? Krishna, can you mute yourself? Okay, so observe carefully what I want to provide the information here. So this is basically whenever we are trying to call this particular box weight constructor, now what we are doing is we are trying to call the box constructor. But how we are calling this? With help of this particular super keyword. Now what we need to understand here, before calling this particular, like before performing the operation with the box weight, internally first it is going to give the highest priority. It is going to give the highest priority to the box class. So why it is going to give the highest priority? First we are going to execute the super class, and later we'll execute the subclass here. So for example, if I'm going to make outside of this particular statement here, outside of this particular statement, again it is giving me an error. Why it is giving me an error? Because basically whenever we are calling this particular box weight constructor, now we need to give the highest priority to the superclass constructor. Like this is the first executable statement. Okay, this is the first executable statement wherever we are trying to use this particular super. But here now I'm not giving the first executable. I'm giving the second executable statement here. So this is the second priority. Whenever you are trying to give this particular second priority, it is giving me an error. Okay, now understand here what is the error it is giving here. So constructor call must be first statement in a constructor. Getting the point? So constructor call must be the first statement here. So because this is the error we are getting here, now what I will do, again, I'm moving into this particular statement as a first here. Now, whatever the error we have seen earlier, the error is no longer available. Okay, so this is important. Now what happens here? Whenever we are calling this particular box weight, now it will go to the super class. So that is called our box class. Now you can, if I'm trying to click this, the super keyboard, now it will go to the box class. So observe carefully. So because of this particular relation, now it is coming to this particular box class. Now it is printing this message and it is initializing this. Once it is initialized here, getting the point? Once it is initialized here, now it will go back to the wherever it is called here. So later it will inside this particular value. Now it will go to this particular object here. Okay. So this is a way the super class constructors are going to call with help of this particular super keyword here. Okay. Now this is we need to understand here. So this is the simple behavior of this particular super keyword. Now later what I am doing here. So box weight I'm trying to use. Okay. So at this time, because we already identified the of like a primitive type data type here. Now I'm going to create a one object type here. So let me check any object type we are having. So right now we don't have a object type. Okay. So here now what I'm doing here, I'm going to create a one constructor. Public box constructor and is expecting box parameter. Object as a parameter I'm passing. Okay. So here what I'm doing here. So this dot width is equals to box dot width here. Cutting the point. So box dot width. Okay. And later this dot height is equals to box dot height. Okay. This is the second parameter. And finally box dot depth is equals to, sorry, this dot depth is equals to box dot depth here. Okay. So now observe carefully what I'm doing here. So this is important, we need to understand. So I define this particular three variables, like I'm trying to initializing the three properties here with help of this particular box. Okay. So this is we discussed in the last session how we can pass object as a parameter. But this example now I'm going to explain with help of this particular super keyword. Now you can see inside this particular box weight, what I'm doing is I'm trying to define box. One more constructor I'm defining, and this constructor is expecting box weight. So here I'm going to use BW. Okay. So this dot weight is equals to BW dot weight here. Okay. And here I'm going to call super. what we can call BW. Okay, now you can see again we are getting an error. So this is important. This is first executable statement. This is the first executable statement. Now observe. So the first example, what we did basically, here we pass the primitive type parameters. Now the second one, I'm trying to pass object here. BW basically it is an object. What is the type here? It is contain box weight here. Okay, this is important. We need to understand here. And now what I will do, I will create a one more object here. Getting the point? I'm trying to create a one more object, something like BWT. And whenever I'm trying to call this, what I'm doing is I'm not going to provide this particular primitive types here. So here I'm going to pass BW1 here. BW1. Now, what we need to understand here. So let me write the information. So like the message I'm going to write so that we'll understand. So which one is executing first here. Okay. Let's see what is the message we can write here. Object as parameter. But what is an object we are going to pass here? Like this message coming from the which class? Something like box weight object as a parameter. So just I'm going to copy this and I will go to this particular box class. Now I will go to this particular box class and here I'm trying to provide the message. And here, what is the message we can identify? This is a box object as a parameter. Getting the point? Box object as a parameter. Now we can understand here. So which parameters are going to call and what is the information we are having here. So let me go to the main class. And this is the main class I'm trying to executing here. Now observe carefully. Box parameter constructor it is calling. Why this parameters constructor is calling? Because here we are trying to create a one parameters constructor with a double data types here. With a double data type. And the second object we are trying to create. Whenever we are trying to create a second object here, what I'm doing here, I'm trying to pass a BW1. Basically, BW1 is a object references here. Okay, BW1 is a object reference variable of this particular box weight here. Now you can see, so it is calling internally the first priority, it will go to the box object as a parameter, and later it is moving on to the object box weight object as a parameter. Okay, and here because of this, it is calling this particular information box parameter. Because of this particular box class, it is calling internally. Now if I'm going to run same example one more time, observe carefully how it is calling. So first parameters constructor we are calling. Why we are calling the parameters constructor? Because here this is because of this particular box weight we are calling, and later we are calling object as a parameter. Whenever we are calling object as a parameter, now it is going to the box class, and later it is going to the box weight. Finally it is printing the value method. So this value method we are calling, and this is the get weight here. Okay, so this is the way the parameter object as a the parameters constructors are going to call. Finally, what we need to understand here, so let me go to this box weight, and here this is the object we are passing, and we are passing to this particular super. So what I will do here I'm going to print this BW. Okay, here I'm going to print this particular BW, and once we print this particular BW here, now here I'm going to print box here, so that we can easily identify the references variable. Why we can I'm trying to explain the reference variable? Because here we are passing object as a parameter. Whenever I'm trying to pass object as a parameter, we need to identify the references variable. So observe carefully which object is creating internally. Now you can see. So even though box object as a parameter is calling internally, it is trying to print the box weight object only. Internally, it is printing the box weight object here. Getting the point? The same object, whatever the box weight object we created, the same object now it is passing to the parameter of superclasser. Now read this box object as a parameter. Where we define this? We define this here, box object as a parameter. But here we are trying to print this particular box here. But which object is printing it? Now you can see it is a box weight object here. It is printing the box weight. From the box weight object, getting the point? From the box weight object, we are trying to copy the three properties into this particular instance variable here. Okay, so this is important. Because of this, now what we need to understand here. So here compile time, again this is important. Compile time basically it is trying to look up the box class properties. Runtime, because this object we are passing runtime. Whenever we are running the main method, we are passing this object here. But while implementing this particular example, so it's going to look up the current class like box class dot properties only. Okay, it's going to look up the current like a box class property. But runtime, the object is we are passing as a box weight here. So this is very important. We are discussing the inheritance related example here. Okay, now what you need to understand, even though we are trying to pass a box weight object information, even though we are trying to pass the box weight object information here, but from the box weight object, it is trying to load only these three properties here. So as I explained, basically box weight, it's contain the width, depth, and height properties logically here, not physically here. Getting the point? This is important here. In the two locations, the same object we are passing. Okay. So any questions? Any questions regarding this particular object as a parameter? How we are passing here? Okay, Sai, నీకు ఏమైనా questions ఉన్నాయా?
Sir, public box weight, void volume, public double, ఎన్ని separate కదా సార్?
ఇక్కడ స్కోప్ ఇంపార్టెంట్ కదా. ఇక్కడ 13 లో ఓపెన్ చేశాను, 17 కి క్లోజ్ చేశాను. సో ఇది కన్స్ట్రక్టర్, దీన్ని మనం మెథడ్ అంటాము. సో ఎందుకంటే కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ ను అబ్జర్వ్ చేస్తే ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ రిటర్నింగ్ ఎనీ వాల్యూ. ఈవెన్ వీఆర్ నాట్ రైటింగ్ ద వాయిడ్, బట్ హియర్ వీఆర్ డిఫైనింగ్ వాయిడ్. సో దిస్ ఈస్ అ మెథడ్ హియర్. సో డిఫరెన్సెస్ ఫస్ట్ ఐడెంటిఫై చేయాలి ఇక్కడ. కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ ఏంటి, మెథడ్ ఏంటి. Okay, so volume is a method, get weight is a method, and set weight is also method. And ikkada, so box weight is a constructor, and box weight is also one more constructor, and this is also one more constructor. ఇక్కడ ఏంటంటే అర్థం చేసుకోవాల్సింది, కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ నేమ్ ఏదైతే ఈ నేమ్ ఇచ్చామో ఈ నేమ్ ఈజ్ గోయింగ్ టు మ్యాచ్ విత్ క్లాస్ నేమ్ హియర్. కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ నేమ్ అండ్ క్లాస్ నేమ్ రెండు ఈక్వల్ గా ఉంటాయి. ఓకే, ఇది ఫస్ట్ నుంచి నేను డిస్కస్ చేస్తున్నాను. ఇక్కడ చూస్తే మెథడ్ నేమ్, క్లాస్ నేమ్ డిఫరెంట్ గా ఉంది. ఓకే, ఈ మెథడ్ నేమ్ అండ్ ఈ క్లాస్ నేమ్ డిఫరెంట్ గా ఉంది. ఇక్కడ గెట్ వెయిట్ అని ఇచ్చాను, క్లాస్ నేమ్ బాక్స్ వెయిట్ అని ఉంది. ఓకే, బట్ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ నేమ్ చూస్తే 3 కన్స్ట్రక్టర్లు డిఫైన్ చేశాను ఇక్కడ, బాక్స్ వెయిట్, బాక్స్ వెయిట్, బాక్స్ వెయిట్. ఈ 3 కన్స్ట్రక్టర్స్ సేమ్ నేమ్ కలిగి ఉన్నాయి. ఓకే, ఇది అన్నట్టు కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ కి ఉన్న డిఫరెన్స్, మెథడ్ కి ఉన్న డిఫరెన్స్. నేను ఆల్రెడీ సో దిస్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మీ ఆల్రెడీ డిఫరెన్షియేట్ రిలేటెడ్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మనం ముందే డిస్కస్ చేసాము. ఒకసారి నువ్వు మళ్ళీ కన్ఫ్యూజన్ ఏమైనా ఉంటే ఆ ప్రీవియస్ వీడియోస్ ఒకసారి రిఫర్ చెయ్యి. బట్ ఇక్కడ ఏం చేశానంటే ఈ ఎగ్జాంపుల్కి ఏమో ద ప్రిమిటివ్ టైప్ పారామీటర్స్ పాస్ చేశాను. సో ఈ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్కి ఏమో నేను ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఇచ్చాను. ఓకే, ఆబ్జెక్ట్ పాస్ చేస్తే ఇక్కడ బాక్స్ వెయిట్ అనే ఆబ్జెక్ట్ పాస్ చేస్తున్నాను, అండ్ సేమ్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్ నేను సూపర్ క్లాస్ కి కాల్ చేస్తున్నాను. ఎస్, సో ఇక్కడ సూపర్ క్లాస్ ప్రాపర్టీస్ లైక్ సూపర్ క్లాస్ కన్స్ట్రక్టర్ ని కాల్ చేస్తున్నాను. బట్ ఇక్కడ ఏం పాస్ చేస్తున్నాను, బీడబ్ల్యూ. బీడబ్ల్యూ ఇస్ ద టైప్ ఏంటి ఇక్కడ, బాక్స్ వెయిట్. బట్ ఇఫ్ యూ గో టు దిస్ బాక్స్ క్లాస్ హియర్, అండ్ ఇక్కడ ఏ టైప్ స్పెసిఫై చేశాను, ఇక్కడ బాక్స్ స్పెసిఫై చేశాను. ఎందుకు ఇక్కడ నేను బాక్స్ స్పెసిఫై చేశానంటే బికాస్ so we are having only 3 properties. I want to set only 3 properties, width, height, and depth. Okay, because it is a super type here. It is a super type. For example, if I'm going to modify to box weight, వాట్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ హియర్? ఏం జరుగుతుంది ఇక్కడ? ఎందుకు ఎర్రర్స్ వస్తున్నాయి? బాక్స్ వెయిట్ లో మనకి ప్రాపర్టీస్ లేవు. ఎప్పుడైతే ఇది వెరీ ఇంపార్టెంట్ ఇక్కడ, ఎందుకంటే ఈ ఎర్రర్స్ ఎందుకు వస్తున్నాయి అంటే బేసిక్గా ఇక్కడ వాట్ వీ నీడ్ టు అండర్స్టాండ్, కంపైల్ టైమ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ చెకింగ్ దీస్ ప్రాపర్టీస్. ఓకే, but these values will available runtime here. These values logically available at runtime, but compile time these values are not available. Okay, compile time these values are not available at compilation phase. So because of this, now what I did here, I made here box here. Getting the point? So box class can have these properties here because inside the box class we define this. So these are all the three properties here. Okay, so now observe carefully what we need to understand here. This is very important here. Here I'm trying to specifying the box class and I'm trying to providing here. But whenever I'm trying to provide the box weight, what happening internally? So we are getting the multiple errors. Why we are getting a multiple errors? While compiling this particular code, compiler, it will go to this particular box weight. It will try to look up the width, height and depth properties. But inside this particular box weight class, we don't have a properties. Those properties are available logically, but whatever the properties are available logically, so those will exist at runtime, not compile time. Compile time basically, while writing the code, compiler will compile the code. When running the code, the compiler will execute all the properties. So this is important here. Okay. Now if you observe carefully, here what we are doing is we are trying to implementing the code. Whenever we are trying to implementing the code, what happens internally? ఎప్పుడైతే మనం ఇక్కడ ఇంప్లిమెంట్ చేసి రాస్తున్నామో, ఇక్కడ ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ నేను బాక్స్ వెయిట్ అని ఇచ్చాను అనుకోండి, ఏం జరుగుతుంది ఇక్కడ? బాక్స్ వెయిట్ క్లాస్కి వెళ్ళి ఇట్ విల్ ఐడెంటిఫై ద ప్రాపర్టీస్. Get in the point? Compilation phase. At compilation phase, what is doing it? It will go to this particular box weight class. It will try to identify this particular properties. But at a compile time, we will not identify these particular values. Why we will not identify? Because what we are doing is we are making the relation with this particular box class. So this particular relation, what happens internally? Whenever we are creating an object of this particular box weight, so then only we'll get the superclass properties into the subclasses here. Okay, but I'm not creating any object at compile time, so these properties are no longer available. This property is no longer available. So because of this, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to change to the box here. So finally, whenever we are trying to call this particular object here, whenever we are trying to call object, so this object, what I'm passing is I'm passing a box weight object, I'm passing, not the box object. So that's the reason I'm printing this particular box I'm printing here. This particular box contain the box weight object here. From the box weight object, we are calling these three properties like width property, height property and depth property. These properties are coming from the box weight because the box weight logically available this property, not physically. So carefully observe. Logically is different, physically is different here. Getting the point? This is we need to understand very carefully here. Okay. So now because of this, the runtime is not giving me any error here. Okay. So someone having the question, why print here com.core7? So you're talking about this particular line or you're talking about this particular line? So what is the second line means here? I could not understand the second line output. So can you please explain me, Krishna? So what exactly you're trying to ask? Because here we are having, so first line, second line, and the third, fourth, and the fifth one. So in that case, if it is a second line, this is an output. Here I'm trying to print this. Okay, if it is a second line, so this is you can identify as system.out.println. Now I'm trying to print this particular box. Okay, if it is this one, so this is the reference I'm printing here. Basically, this is the reference here. This reference is calling from where? The reference is calling from this particular box weight. Here I'm calling the super. So whenever we are making this particular super, and here it is contain the object here. It is not the primitive type here. Primitive type basically it's look like this. Getting the point? It is look like this. But here what I'm doing is I'm trying to call this particular box weight is a object type. The same object I'm passing here. Okay, the same object I'm passing here. And from where this particular constructor is calling, and it is calling this line number 7. This is the line number 7. Here I'm passing the object here. What is an object I'm passing? This is the BW1. BW1 is having type called box weight here. BW1 is having the type called box weight. So this is the BW1 I'm passing here. Now it will go to this particular constructor, line number 13. It will try to execute, and here internally we are calling this super. So super will do the super class constructor, that is called line number 31. We are printing this particular message, and later we are initializing the values here. Okay, compile time, it will look up this particular box class. Runtime, these values are going to initialize from this box weight class. Okay, this is very important here. The compiler, it is looking the compilation phase is the different object, and runtime it is trying to look up the different object here. It's because of the inheritance concept. It is because of the inheritance concept. If I'm not adding this inheritance functionality here, so you can see lot of error we are getting. We are getting lot of errors here. So this is very important. We need to understand. The first one, the super is not working. The super is going to work based on this particular inheritance like extends keyword. Now the get width method, height method, and depth method we are not able to identify. Getting the point? This method we define inside this particular box class. Now you can see, come down here, get width, get height, and get depth method we are calling here. Getting the point? So this is very important. We need to understand whenever we are making this particular relations here. Okay, if I'm not adding the relation, super keyword also it's not working, and some of the method we are calling, those methods also not working here. Any questions here? So this example what we are discussing, this is very important because it is acting compilation phase is a different information, and it is acting runtime is a different information here. Getting the point? So now I want to provide one more information. So here, observe carefully. I'm going to provide the type I'm modifying here. Here I'm trying to modify the type. So observe carefully. This is important here. Getting the point? Whenever I modify this particular type to box here, whenever I modify this particular type to box, now we'll see how many errors we are getting. First here we are getting an error. Why we are getting an error? Box weight basically, this particular parameter is expecting the type here. What is the type we provided here? Now if I'm going to open this, the box weight, if we are providing the box weight type here, not the box type here. So carefully observe. Even we are passing the box BW1. What is an object we are passing? Which object we are creating? New box weight object. Even though we are trying to create a box weight object, but compiler is giving me an error. Why the compiler is giving me an error? Because so type here, type is important. So this particular types are very, is going to play very important role. The types are going to identify the compilation phase. The real objects are going to pass it at runtime here. Getting the point? The real objects are going to pass it at runtime. But here if you see, so I modify the type to box here. Whenever I modify the type to box here, what happening internally? This line is giving me an error. Why it is giving me an error? Because inside the box weight, now I did not provide it as a box here. I am providing box weight. So here types are different. Getting the point? Compiler cannot identify here, cannot pass with the different values here. Okay, here we are passing the box weight type, but here we are providing BW1. BW1 now in the compilation phase, the BW1 is going to treat as this particular box type here. Getting the point? Now you can see this error. Constructor box weight, box is undefined here. This is important here. whatever the constructor, the box weight constructor we are having. Now the parameter is expecting box here. Let me copy this message, and here I'm providing here. So here I'm trying to providing information. See, the constructor box weight is expecting box as a parameter. Is expecting box as a parameter. Okay, but what is the constructor we define? Here we define the box weight. Here we define the box weight. For example, if I'm going to remove this box weight. Now, so carefully observe. Now see, for this particular error, now I modified, get remember, for this particular error, now modified to this particular box. Whenever I modify, again you can see bw dot weight, because what is the bw here? Bw is a type called box. So inside the box class, we don't have a property. Getting the point? Inside this particular box class, we don't have a property. So this property we define basically inside this particular box weight class. So see how many errors we are getting here. Getting the point? How many errors we are getting? So this is very important here. So this is very important here. In the which scenario we want to use this particular super type here. In the which scenario we want to use this particular super type here. Let me modify this. Okay, I'm modifying to the box weight only, and here I will identify with the different properties here. Okay, this is very important. We need to understand it. Compilation phase, it will look up the different value. At runtime, it will look up the different value because of this particular inheritance here. Because of this particular inheritance, it is trying to provide the multiple informations here. Okay, so is it clear? Anyone having any questions? Okay, so now what I want to provide, the another important concept to call. So this is very important. We need to understand here. Now what I will do, so I'm going to discuss about the super with a member here. I'm going to discuss about the super with this particular member here. So how we can access the super with the member here. Let me write here inside the inheritance. I'm going to create a one class here, something like super A. Okay, so whenever we are trying to define this particular super A, what I'm doing is I'm going to provide the parameters here. So what are all the parameters I want to provide here? Int I, okay, I will define as I. Into I am defining here. This is important, we need to understand. This is the super class here. Right, now I'm going to define one more class, and here subclass B. Okay, subclass B I'm going to provide here, and here I'm trying to provide extends keyword, and here super yeah, super yeah, and here also I'm going to providing the same variable. What is the variable I'm providing here? Something like I, and this particular I variable already defined inside this particular super class here. Getting the point? This is important, we need to understand here. The super keyword basically what you need to understand here. So this variable already defined in the super class, and the same variable I'm trying to define in the subclass. So how it is going to work? Getting the point? How it is going to work? Now we need to understand here. Okay. So let's write the simple example. I want to call the super class properties. Here, what I will do, I'm going to create a constructor. Sub B, and the constructor I'm trying to call int I, int j. Okay. So what happens internally? Getting the point? What happens internally? I want to set the value because I is equals to something like I. if I'm going to set this, so here I can modify this dot I. Get in the pen. If I'm going to modify this dot I, which value is going to set here? Which value is going to set here? The value is going to set as a the current class whatever the I property. Like current class, whatever this particular I variable we are having. Okay. Now I want to set I value for this particular superclass also. I want to set the I value of this particular superclass. So what is the best way of setting the value? What is the best way of setting the values here? So now observe carefully. Here we need to use the keyword super dot I. Get in the pen. Super dot I is equals to, we can provide as a something like J. Get in the pen. So otherwise what we can do, we can make this particular I, and here I can make as a J. Now understand here how we are trying to differentiate the, even though in the two classes we are having same variable name. In the subclass we are having same variable, and in the superclass also we are having same variable name. Whenever we are having the same variable name, we are going to use the differentiation like this, super dot I equals to I. But important information. For example, if I'm going to make as a private, what happens here? Okay, if I'm going to make as a private, this variable directly we cannot access here. This variable directly we cannot access. What is the best way of accessing this? Okay, first, as we discussed in the last sessions here, I'm going to generate the setters methods for this particular I property. Okay, I'm trying to generating here. Whenever I'm trying to generate here, so what I'm doing here, if I'm going to call this super dot set method. Okay, what we can set here? The I value we can set here. Now what you understand here? So this is the additional behavior to call this particular method here. Get in the pen. This is very important here. So I'm calling this particular method here, super dot set of I. Now if this is a constructor, now we don't need to call this super. Directly we can call the method here. Basically, whenever we are having same naming convention, either the constructor or the method or the properties, we can go for the super to differentiate the current class object with the super class object information. But here what I'm doing it, so this set I method basically it is no longer available inside this particular subclass B. Okay, if it is no longer available, what we are doing basically directly we can call the method. Directly we can call the method and we can set the value. But the problem here, whenever we are having the same naming convention, to differentiate the subclass method with the superclass, we need to use a super information. Okay, so this is important here. If I'm not adding this particular private property here, so I can access the superclass information with help of this particular super dot I. Okay, this is I want to share the information here. Now directly what we can do, we can create an object, we can call this particular information here. So if I'm going to create objects here only, main class, now what I will do, here I'm going to create sub B, SB is equals to new sub B I'm going to call, and is expecting parameters constructor. We can pass the values, something like 10 comma 20 I'm passing. Okay, 10 comma 20 I'm passing, and here SB dot I am trying to print. So whenever I'm trying to use this SB dot I, so which value it is going to print here? This is very important here. Whenever I'm trying to call this SB dot I, which value is going to print? The current class object is subclass. Whatever the sub B class we created, the sub B class, the property is going to provide here. And if I want to access a superclass information, what is the best way here? Something like you can print this SB dot get I, because the superclass property we made as a private. Whenever we made as a private, directly we cannot access the properties. Directly we cannot access. What is the best way of accessing it? With help of this particular methods only. we are going to access this particular information here. Okay, so this is important information we need to understand whenever we are trying to providing the variable name as a same here. Okay, not only the variable name, if you are trying to providing this particular methods, constructors, getting the point. Everything we can differentiate with the help of this particular super keyboard. Okay, so what is a, let's see, getter for getting the variable and a setter for initial. Yes. So if you see here, what we need to understand here, get method is trying to return the I value. The get method is trying to return the I value. The set method is expecting one parameter. It's like a push and pop method. Getting the point? Whatever the push and pop method we discussed earlier. So this is the push method and this is the pop method. The pop method is returning the value and push method is trying to set the value. So same way, now this is also set I method is expecting one parameter, and whatever the value we are having, I'm trying to set into this particular variable. So this variable we declare here. And whenever I'm trying to call get I, it is trying to return the I value. Same way, how many properties you are going to have? You can create a setters and getters. Setters basically setting the value. Getter basically it will try to get the value. Okay, so this is the main purpose of this particular setter getters we are going to use. So basically in the real time application, we are going to create a multiple setters and multiple getters here. For each and every class, we are going to generate setters and getters here. We'll see once we completed this particular core Java, we'll also create a multiple getters and setters here. Any questions here? సాయి నీకు ఏమైనా క్వశ్చన్స్ ఉన్నాయా ఈ సూపర్ క్లాస్ అండ్ సబ్ క్లాస్? ఓకే okay, so try to practice very well, and I'm going to delete the video and upload the yesterday what we discussed here. Okay, so tomorrow we'll continue one of the important example call how we can create a multi-level hierarchy. Okay, so far whatever we discuss here like a super class and a subclass. Okay, this particular inheritance we'll call it as a simple inheritance. Okay, simple inheritance basically one superclass and one subclass here. One superclass, one subclass. Getting the point? So this we'll call it as a simple inheritance. So tomorrow we are going to discuss one of the sorry. So today evening we are going to discuss here. So another important concept called multi-level inheritance here. So how this particular multi-level inheritance we are going to what is the hierarchy we are having. First we'll understand the hierarchy, and later we'll try to create the classes here. Okay, this hierarchy will give you the more information here. So once you are understanding the hierarchy, we can create any number of classes with this particular example here. Okay, so this is all about the simple inheritance here. So tomorrow, like evening, we'll discuss about the multi-level hierarchy, how it is going to work here. Okay, so try to practice the session. So and we'll continue evening.